What is going on, YouTube? Today I'm going to give you an update of my first semester of physical therapy school, along with some of the first impressions of the program that I'm in and what you can expect if you are applying to a physical therapy program in the future. So the first semester of PT school is in the books. It's kind of hard to even believe at this point. I feel like I just sort of blinked and it's already been done. 3 months just flew by like that, and I feel like 3 years could fly by just as fast. But I think that has a lot to do with the pace of the program, which I'm going to talk about here right away. So for anybody out there listening to any of these details, obviously what's going on in my program is going to differ for what's going on in your program or the programs that you are looking to apply to. Every program has a different starting date, and every program is going to have different curriculum throughout their program. So you might not have the same experience in your first semester that I had in my first semester. So my program, I believe, started us out fairly easy. They don't try to kill you right away. They only gave us 8 credits to start out the semester. Of the 8 credits, 5 credits were just regional anatomy. So this is like your undergrad anatomy, just a lot faster paced, more in depth, and yeah, anatomy was not easy, but I still did very well in it. It was very enjoyable, and I think they try to make sure that you can understand anatomy because it's such a foundational aspect of what PT is that they really want you to focus on that in your first semester. Just for any of you else out there who might be listening to this that are pre-PT, we actually had our first anatomy exam 2 weeks into the semester. And I don't even know if it was actually 2 weeks. It was more like a week and a half. We had our first week where we just basically got the intro to the class, and then a couple of lab meetup times, and then bang, we already were having an exam. So be prepared. The PT school is definitely going to be a bit more of an increase in pace than maybe some of you are accustomed to in your undergraduate career. And because COVID is still a thing as of the filming of this video and as of the time that I took the class, we sort of had a hybrid model within the class where we wouldn't have an actual meeting time for lecture, but we would meet for lab time. And when this was announced, I was really sad. I didn't think I would like that aspect of the program. But to be honest with you, I kind of wish all the classes could do this now. Because having the lecture component online allows you to be able to reference that lecture material whenever you want. You can plan accordingly throughout your week to find out when exactly you want to watch lecture material. You can always have it online to look back at when you're studying for your exam. Whereas if you have in-person lecture, most profs are not going to record the in-person lectures if everybody's meeting in person. So you hear that material, if you miss an aspect of material, too bad, so sad, because you only hear it once. You don't have an opportunity to go back and get it again. And if you did have questions about the material, you could always just ask the lecturers in lab, because it's the same faculty, at least in my program, in the lab that is on the lecture side of anatomy. So it was really convenient in my eyes for the way that anatomy was structured. Going into PT school, I really didn't know too many people in my cohort. There was a few people that I knew from undergrad, but I didn't necessarily know them well. Definitely people I would have like 1 or 2 classes with at the most. And we wouldn't necessarily always have the closest relationship in those classes, if that makes any sense. But on the first week of class, we found out what our lab groups were. And as I mentioned to you in this past clip, the only people that you're going to see are the people that are in your lab group. And because of COVID, there was enough people taking this course that they had to split it up into 4 groups. And another fun fact about my program is we actually take anatomy with the PA students, the physician assistant students. And I was actually lucky enough to know a girl who was in PA school for her first year that I felt very comfortable around studying. And we met, and it was going good from the start because I knew she was really smart. I knew I could hold my own, and that's how it started out. It started out really good. We went on a roll. But just for anybody out there who's considering PA for a career, I learned a lot about the quality of individual that may be going into a PA program is a very high quality individual. You have to be very smart to handle the rigor in a PA program due to just the massive amount of information that you need to learn in just 2 years. And most PA programs have that entire second year as just clinical opportunities. So they are some smart people. They basically have to learn what medical doctors have to learn. Maybe not quite as in depth, but they have to learn all of that information in 2 years. So you have to be a really smart cookie to be in PA. And that was my experience with all the PA students. So shout out to the PA students. You guys are so talented. I do actually plan on getting a PA onto this channel to interview about the career, so make sure that you subscribe. Maybe turn on notifications so you don't miss when I drop that video if you want to learn more about becoming a PA. It was actually recently voted the best job in America according to, I believe, the US News. I will put up an image up here for that. But anyways, I studied with the PAs for a while, but the PAs were taking more than double the credit load that the PTs were. So there got to be a point pretty quickly into the semester where I was just not seeing them at all because they were so busy with their schedules and pretty much all they had time to do was study. I found the pace for anatomy to be pretty intense overall. I can't even imagine having some of the other classes that those guys had on top of it. But just to give anybody out there who's pre-PT an insight on what's going on with anatomy, at least for my class, we would get about 4 or 5 study guides that would be just filled with concepts that they expect you to know. And these guides would range from anywhere to from like 3 or 4 pages to, on the longest I think we got was about like 8 or 9 pages, which once you filled all those guides in, those can turn into 20 to 25 page documents in some cases. So it's a lot of information. I would say we probably have to learn that amount of information within 3 weeks in between exams. So make sure that you have your study skills honed down into being able to understand that type of stuff at that pace. The other thing about grad school, specifically in my PT program, is that you cannot get below a 75% in any exam, or they could technically fail you for the course. Now, in most cases, you will perform remediation work to try and show competency in whatever subject that you may have failed on. But if you do that enough, then you could be out of the program. So you definitely have to take this stuff seriously. It's not like you can just cram necessarily and get by. Those days are done. Now, if all this sounds that scary to anybody out there, this is the best advice I got from an older PT student when I asked him about how hard is PT school. You know, it sounds super intense. He gave me the advice that if you were good enough to make it into PT school, you're good enough to get through and become a PT. There's a reason why they admitted you into the program. They believe that you have what it takes to be a PT. So just ride that wave of confidence, man. I mean, that's the reason why you're here. This is the stuff you're supposed to be passionate about and interested in. So don't downplay your abilities. You made it here for a reason. But anyways, after the PA students had to pretty much get their own lives in order and couldn't study with me anymore just due to conflicting schedules, it sort of forced me to get out and meet people in my own cohort, which was inevitable anyway. But I was lucky enough, I met two really nice ladies, and we formed our own little study group, friend group, and they seem wonderful. Pretty much everybody I've met in my cohort seems wonderful as far as I'm concerned. You gotta understand, if you're going to PT, most of the time there's gonna be people in your cohort that fit the stereotypical PT mold. But even if you don't fall into that stereotypical PT mold, there's all kinds of people that you'll find in your cohort. Your cohort is very diverse. So don't worry about making friends either. Most likely you'll be able to find plenty of people that you can get along with. But overall, honestly, I haven't been too stressed out in PT school so far. I keep hearing about these next 2 semesters are supposed to be the real tests for if you're made for this or not. But honestly, it hasn't been that bad. For me, this is just me, but it's been so stress relieving to realize that you don't have to get a 4.0 anymore. I know people in my cohort that are doing that. That's fine. If you want to do that, that's fine. But I haven't been worried about that. I still did fine. I got a very respectable GPA. And that has been huge though. You don't have to be perfect anymore. And when you don't have to be perfect anymore, that's just been huge. It's been a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. So one of the other courses that I took was a human development class that sort of focused on everything from embryology to the end of life. That was a very, in my opinion, it was an abstract kind of class. I didn't have a whole lot of prerequisite knowledge about that kind of stuff going into PT school, but it was definitely interesting. Definitely had a lot of new terms coming at me in that one, but it turned out, once again, to be a very nice course. Did fine in it. And then the other course I had was an imaging course, where we actually got to start to use diagnostic ultrasound and get to mess around with that a little bit. I say mess around, try to get some form of competency in that. Most of us haven't ever used ultrasound in my cohort. I would probably guess most people in your cohort won't have either. But really cool stuff. I think that class has definitely put a seed into the back of my head that I'd like to pursue maybe an extracurricular certification in that kind of stuff, because it's really interesting, all that imaging stuff, and it's just another extra skill that you can have in your tool bag as a PT. One more thing I wanted to touch on though about my GPA is I'm still striving to do my best. You cannot have a don't care attitude once you get into PT school, because the pace is just too fast. And you have to try, but you just can't get discouraged anymore if you don't have a perfect grade in every class. That's just the one thing I wanted to add, because if you come in here and just say, oh well, I made it, that's all I needed to do was to get here. No. You are going to have to work extremely hard when you get to physical therapy school. The other thing I wanted to touch on really quickly was that in my program specifically, we talk about the importance of reflection on what we do as future clinicians, where we make a plan, try to execute that plan, and then when we have done that plan or followed through with that plan, we look back and see how that plan went and try to improve on what we did wrong in that process for the future. And that might sound like common sense to a lot of people. Like, yeah, you obviously want to see where you went wrong, but I feel like it's often an overlooked aspect, especially in academia and really in any job. You have to have an open mind. when it comes to looking at yourself objectively and saying, how could I have done something better? Because that's how we all get better as people. It's how we all get better as clinicians. And I don't feel like there are a whole lot of actual occupations that force people to do that with themselves. So this wasn't intended to be a crazy detailed video. If you have any questions about me and what I went through in my first semester of physical therapy school, please drop them in the comments below. I will get back to you and give you the best advice I can on that. I do have, like I said, a pretty hard couple of semesters coming up where we're actually going to be diving a little bit more in depth, maybe looking at the diagnosing and treatment aspects of PT a little bit more, some research, things like that. So the next update should be a lot more in depth and interesting than this one was, but I also have to say that I have some other career interviews coming onto the channel very soon, so you're going to want to stay subscribed for that. I also have something in the works with pre-PTs out there who are looking to get into PT school for this upcoming cycle or the next cycle. So keep your eyes and ears open for that. Be sure to subscribe, give this video a thumbs up if this helped you learn more about what PT school is going to be like. I appreciate everybody watching this video. Catch you in the next one. Peace.